Do you remember when Marcia Brady broke her nose and John Travolta was stuck in that plastic bubble? Then you should check out the Pop Culture Preservation Society, the podcast for people born in the big wheel generation who had no limits on their screen time and learned about making love from AM radio.
We believe our Gen X childhoods gave us unforgettable songs, stories, characters, and images. And if we don't talk about them, they'll disappear, like Marshall, Will, and Holly on a routine expedition.
We have almost 200 episodes preserving the cultural nuggets of our Gen X childhoods, from the Bee Gees and Barry Manilow to the Brady Bunch and Battle of the Network Stars. Every episode is packed with the shows you watched, the songs you listened to, the books you read, and even the posters on your wall. Remember this guy?
Hi, this is Sean Cassidy, and you are listening to the Pop Culture Preservation Society.
Were you Team Sean or Team Leif? It doesn't matter, because all Gen X childhoods are welcome here. And that's exactly what you'll find when you listen to the Pop Culture Preservation Society on your favorite podcasting app.
I'm Carolyn.
I'm Kristen.
And I'm Michelle. And we are your pop culture preservationists.
Welcome to Uncluttered and Unfiltered, the podcast urging you to let it go and don't look back, with nationally acclaimed professional organizer Christine Stone and self-proclaimed hot damn mess radio and TV personality Eden Kendall.
Welcome, everybody, to Uncluttered and Unfiltered. We're the podcast for women over 50. My name is Eden, and Christine is here, too. And Christine is a professional organizer. And in the course of us talking about everything that affects us since we've turned whatever ages we are, late 50s for me, very early 60s for you.
Yes, very early.
But because you are an organizer and because I've been asking for your help so much, people are telling us that just by listening to this podcast, they're getting a little more organized every single time.
Which brings a smile to my face.
I know, that makes you
so happy.
We like to talk about things, though, that are unique to being our age. And one thing that is unique, and it may not be a situation that you or everyone you know is in, but sustaining a very long-term relationship.
Yes.
We are not experts. We count ourselves as lucky as anything else. And we recognize that if you're listening right now, you may either be single again, in a rocky relationship. And so we get, this isn't going to hit everybody where they live, but we wanted your opinions, and we're going to get to your opinions momentarily, but about what advice would you give? Because we now are at that age too, where whether it's from a relationship that didn't work out or one that did, we are in a situation where we're being asked by the younger generation for advice.
Yes. And watching The Golden Bachelorette brings up a lot of questions about marriage in general.
And sustaining long-term relationships. So whether this is just a conversation starter you have with somebody who is considering getting into a long relationship, maybe you are somebody who is in one now and trying to decide whether to stay, whatever the case may be, just it is what it is.
Right.
We are who we are. We are two women that have been married a really long time. Certainly we are not experts.
Right.
But what do you think is the thing you most attribute the fact that you're still hanging on to?
Well, I'll be married 36 years tomorrow. And I thought about this question a lot because, like anything in life, there's good times, there's bad times, there's hard times, there's easy times. And I think you really are in it for the long haul or you're not. And I'm not talking about if someone's being abused or an alcoholic or a drug addict. I'm talking about just two people that are like, I'm bored.
The spark is in the
spark. I realized the minute we said I do, and I moved from Miami to Jacksonville, which 36 years ago was moving from the big city out to the country fields.
Yeah, to the sticks.
I knew that it had to be worked on. You have to, because you're taking one person out of their familiar surroundings. Everybody's young, and then starts the mortgage and the children. And I don't think people realize it, especially with social media nowadays. I think that does young people a disservice because, yes, your wedding day is important, but your wedding day is not a marriage. And a wedding day doesn't make a marriage. It's one day out of a whole lifetime. And so it's really being realistic. And when you're young, thank God people are waiting longer to get married now. I do have to say that because we were both so young. You're naive too. You haven't lived life enough. So sometimes when you're younger, you're like, did I miss out? Did I do enough? Did I, and you start to second guess and you think in your mind, I don't know about you, well, shouldn't this be like a fairy tale?
Correct.
And it just isn't. Real life takes over. Things that you never expected ever in a million years happen. And then you have to deal with those things. And you either do it as a partnership or you don't. And I have a lot of friends who have been married more than once. And they'll see me and they'll say, I really wished I would have stayed with the father of my children, because now that we're older and we're having grandkids, it wasn't bad enough for us to not be married.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were just both bored.
And it's hard to know because nobody has a crystal ball or a time machine to go back in time and see which path would have been the happiest for everyone involved.
Right.
I always go back to number one is choose wisely.
Yes.
And obviously, the first step of any long-term, sustainable relationship is you've made a good choice right out of the gate. The person you're choosing for the long-term reasons. I always joke with my husband and we talk about how the day I knew for sure I wanted to marry him, he was installing a ceiling fan for a friend of mine at her apartment. And I looked up and I was like, the guy your friend can call to come over, he's a guy, he's handy, he's willing to help a friend. There are all these things that I recognize while he's up on that ladder. And I wasn't seeing him a week down the road, a year down the road. I was seeing this is a guy who I could have a house with, who down the road is going to take care of things. And I don't have to always pick up a phone to call somebody. And I think when you have those kinds of little pieces of it fall into your choices, it's obviously helpful because it's something that is long-term. If you're basing it on, he's great looking,
right? Forget it.
That's going to pass.
Well, they lose their hair.
Yeah.
They gain a little bit of weight, whatever it is, as do we. And so he may have a full head of hair at 26, but when he's 62, he may be balding or losing hair. So you don't go just on looks. That's one thing I can say for sure.
The sexual chemistry part of it, the mutual attraction, there are going to be times if you were side by side on a graph through your life where you're going to have what they call a glow up and you're going to be looking amazing, right. Then they're going to pass you and they're going to look amazing. Right. And you're going to look like crap and they're going to.
Right.
So that piece of it, you can't even look at that. You can't even go by that because obviously people pair up based on attraction at the start, but that kind of thing doesn't sustain itself the way that it could. We're not in Hollywood.
Doesn't. No. And also now that we're at a certain age, you're in your late 50s, I'm in my sex also, it's important, but it's not like it was when you were young because there are so many other things you're dealing with. Elderly parents, your kids are older, you have grandkids, you're still working. There's so many other things. And also with menopause comes your whole body shifts and changes. And when you're young, you don't even think about it. And so that's why I'm saying a lot of times people don't look at perimenopause, and menopause is something that's going to put them in a totally different emotional place, physical space. So that's what happens when you've been married a long time. Everything shifts and changes as you go. You morph into something different.
And if you can recognize the fact that you're going to go through changes, even hobbies,
yes,
things you like to do on the weekends, maybe you guys will come together on some hobbies and drift apart on others.
Right.
Maybe in both of our cases, we have husbands that golf and neither of us have any interest in that. So it's just a balance, a regular ongoing reassessment of how you're going to spend time together. If right now, this is how many weekends we're hanging out together versus how many weekends we're hanging out apart, that may not always be the case.
Right.
I might meet a group of lady friends that want to go do something on a regular basis. It's a new hobby for me, and that gives him free time to go golf more.
Yes.
But if I'm hanging on, well, we didn't used to do it.
Right.
That makes it very difficult.
And I think that's what's really harmful the longer you're married is, used to be is not going to solve anything. And I think open communication as you've been married longer as well, too, because women, like I said, shift, and men have menopause. Things shift for them, and they don't like to talk about it the way women do. So they keep a lot inside, and then you deal with health issues. Some people start to have their own health issues or deaths in the family. You're dealing with so many more things as you get older that you really see what your priorities are in life. The older you get versus when you're newly young and you have little kids. And of course, it's going to be stressful when you have young children. The lack of sleep alone almost did me in.
There are stressors in every phase of your life. We asked you guys over on our ladies only Uncluttered and Unfiltered Facebook page, which please do take a moment and join. It's a private group, but we'll let you right in. And we asked you, the way we phrased this was, just to make it really simple, was what advice would you have for a newlywed as far as sustaining a long-term relationship? Now, this advice could come from a place of not having success in a relationship, because some of the best advice you can get sometimes is from somebody who made a mistake and is willing to share the wisdom they picked up along the way. Erica said, I love this. Do you want to be right or do you want to be married? She said that is a Dr. Phil thing. And it's so true. Compromise is king.
I 100% agree. Being a Leo myself, I had to learn that because
not being right all the time.
Yes.
It's hard.
Yes, because my general nature is thinking, well, this is the way you should be doing it. And she's exactly right.
I loved that Erica went on to say, be in charge of some things and let him be in charge of others, because everyone enjoys control sometimes and everyone likes being taken care of other times. So when you can figure out which of those things you want to be in control of and which of those things you want to be taken care of about, I think once.
I also think people don't realize when they get married, they're bringing two childhoods into a relationship.
They are.
And nobody realizes that until after they already say, I do.
Our quality of life matters. Menopause shouldn't take anything away from us. No two women experience it the same way.
And yet none of us are alone.
Hormone Harmony recognizes all of those symptoms we've talked about so much on this podcast, like feeling down and uncomfortable in your own body.
Hot flashes, sleepless nights.
Now it's easier to manage menopause with Hormone Harmony, science-backed herbal extracts called adaptogens. They help the body adapt to stressors like chaotic hormonal changes.
Women cannot stop talking about it on social media. A bottle of Hormone Harmony is sold every 24 seconds.
That really says something. The biggest benefit I'm hearing about is, quote, feeling like myself again. That is what women are mentioning over and over again in their reviews. For a limited time, you can get 15% off on your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code UUPodcast at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use the code UUPodcast for 15% off today. Uncluttered and Unfiltered is supported by Hearts for Minds. Can you imagine waiting 11 years to get screened for cancer? On average, people with mental health issues experience an 11-year delay between symptoms and seeking help. And close to 2/3 of mental illnesses go untreated. Hearts for Minds promotes healthy lives by promoting mental health education, facilitating early identification, and connecting people to treatment. Are you ready to learn more? Go to heartsforminds.org. That's hearts, the number 4, minds.org for more information or to learn how you can help.
Correct.
And then they're like, well, I grew up this way. My dad did it this way. My mom did it this way. And he's saying the opposite. Well, we didn't do it this way.
Sure.
And I think having these conversations before you get married is key.
Very important. Edie says, start your financial planning together and now. Money talks can be hard and awkward and drives wedges between couples. There's never a right time to get started working together. And the longer you wait, the more stress it adds. So true.
I totally agree with that. Money is always one of the big factors, especially when you're starting out.
I love this one from Candace. Have your partners back in public, even if you disagree with them. Let me tell you that. And or when my kids correct me, you don't want anyone to ever just intentionally correct you or embarrass you in front of other people. But truly, if you can have your partner's back, at least until you can get somewhere else. And
I 100% agree with that. Even if you don't agree with it,
Right.
wait till you get home and say, I had your back, but you may want to think about this or that, whatever. But when someone doesn't have your back, you feel betrayed. Yeah.
I feel like that's important with your kids too. They just need to know that you've got their back.
Right.
It doesn't mean you can condone every single decision they make. Shayla said, it's easy to get caught up in kids and life, but you need to have time for yourself and time for each other. Both people need their own interest and friends, and doing things together is important, but you also need to have your own things as well. It's about balance. I feel like we have a bunch of really knowledgeable ladies stoling out some really amazing nuggets.
I do think for women, especially, it's so important to keep your own life, because as your kids grow older and leave the nest, if you've relied totally on one other person, I just think that sets you up for a lot of depression as well.
Judy says, put God first. Dawn says, accept the things you cannot change, work lovingly on the things you can, and know the difference. That's, of course, the Lord's Prayer there about having to do that.
Yes. And also, as you get older in a marriage, you do realize, stop trying to change them. That's what you're spending so much of your energy on, is trying to make them somebody they're not. The minute you give that up, you see a shift. I think you see a shift.
I think we talked about that once in an episode about deciding if someone's always late. You just change your schedule and decide, we'll tell them a little bit earlier, or you'll just live with whatever it is.
Right. And you pick
your battles. Yeah. Exactly. Be respectful, Shanna says, to each other. Choose your words carefully. And while big romantic gestures are nice, it's the small day-to-day things that really matter.
Totally agree with that.
Colleen says she has some thoughts about first and second marriages and with kids involved. I think she says she's giving me the impression that she could probably write a little book.
Well, I think second marriages alone, especially if you have kids, that's a whole different, that can be really difficult.
Do not be enmeshed with your family. Leave and cleave to your spouse.
Absolutely.
That's from Marcy. Jennifer says, you should each have your own blanket in bed. It is the key to a happy marriage. Praise you, Jennifer. Hallelujah.
If I had to share a blanket with my husband, I'd be up all night.
I have a weighted blanket that just covers me. And then we have a blanket that covers the whole bed. He doesn't have his own blanket, but I've got to have mine.
Oh, we each have our own blankets. And even when we go to a hotel, I ask at the front desk for a separate blanket.
Do you really?
Yeah, I have to. There's something about it. I have to have my own blanket if I'm going to sleep.
So young and in love, listen, if you hear nothing else we ever say.
Right.
Have your own blanket in your bed. It'll cause a lot of harmony. Holly says, never stop communicating. Just because you have a license, Lisa says, it doesn't give you the right to control each other. Be your own person. Marriage is give and take. It's funny how when we're reading all of these, and they just go on and on, I feel like we could direct you to this, and we could probably print a manual from all of these great pieces of input. I've got to shout out to Rita. Rita's actually a friend of mine, and she turned 80 this year. And Rita says, after 61 years, I think the best advice that I was given by my parents is never go to bed angry, talk it through, get it all out, kiss and make up before you go to sleep.
I think that's great. But I feel that sometimes you need to go to bed angry and get a good night's sleep. It really clears your head and you wake up feeling totally different than you did the night before. When people are angry, they say things they don't mean. And sometimes you can't take back those words. So sometimes you can just, in a nice way, say, I just need to go to sleep. And when we wake up, we can revisit this, because sometimes you just need to clear your head before you speak.
So the old adage, never go to bed angry.
I don't believe that.
You don't believe that?
No, I don't. I think that you need to really take a deep breath sometimes before you speak, because you will say things you regret. And it's never, sometimes people say things so hurtful that you just can't get over them.
I can't disagree with you there, because I tend to really calm down over a good night's sleep.
Me too.
While you were saying that, I was trying to think of, because I do think in a lot of instances that could be a really good idea. Maybe even back in the day when everybody was working regular hours and the kids were going from school. You don't want to end a busy day that's going to start a busy morning, still dealing with fights from the night before. But for the most part, I do like to let things rest.
Because when you get a good night's sleep, you sometimes don't even feel the way you felt. You could be contributing the argument to exhaustion, not feeling heard. The kids were running around like hellions and you needed, whatever it is. When you get a good night's sleep and you're well rested, you're almost like, what was that fight about? What was it really that bad? No.
Is there anything on here of all of these replies that stood out to you that you want to make sure that we get to? Because we're going to close out and ask you to add to this growing list on our Uncluttered and Unfiltered Ladies Only page.
I thought they were all, honestly,
excellent.
I learned so much from these. What I think is, we had mentioned before, you're either married for the long haul and you have that kind of thought in your head as you go through your marriage, or else sometimes it just ends up falling apart because there are so many hard times in a marriage and times that you don't expect. Someone gets sick, whether it's your partner, your family member, your children. And it's really, I fell in love all over with my husband the minute he held my daughter. I was in so much pain after having labor for almost a day and a half with her. The last thing I wanted to do was be like they are in a picture book holding this baby. I just was in so much pain after I had my daughter. And he just grabbed her and sat in a chair in the room and rocked her. And that's a side I never saw of my husband ever. When we got our dogs, you know what I mean? I never saw that side of my husband. Every time you see a new side, when he became a grandfather, a side I never saw that I can't even explain to you.
So there are other versions of your significant other on the horizon. And if you can just suck it up and get through the phase you're in right now, sometimes it's very worth it.
Yeah, get counseling. Counseling is a great thing. It's not for everybody, but if you're going through a rough time, counseling can really help a relationship because it gives you the open communication that you need.
Now, having said that, if one of our friends or sisters or people find themselves in a situation where they can't stick it out and they have to do the very, very difficult thing of ending a relationship, then it's important that we're there for them. And we say it wasn't our shoes we were walking in, and there's no judgment here at all. This was just a discussion on some successful marriages and why they worked and some maybe lessons from people who were there and it didn't quite happen the way.
Well, sometimes things can't be fixed. Sometimes they just can't.
And it's more than just telling the other person we're in it for good. Nobody's getting out of this.
Right.
Sometimes it's just really a matter of irreconcilable differences.
Yes.
And we believe that. So let's tell everybody all the different ways that they can be a part of this community. First of all, you've done the number one thing. That's just listening.
Yes.
Sharing us with one friend is so huge. It's so huge. And then also, of course, we have our Uncluttered and Unfiltered Ladies Only Facebook page, our Patreon page. If you ever wanted to just listen with no commercials or see the video that goes along with this, that's where you can find that. And in the meantime, gosh, how should we close the show? I felt like you guys did the episode for us.
Well, you have to watch next week's episode.
Oh my gosh, yes, we have a big treat.
Or not watch, listen, but
or watch because you
watch on Patreon. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be really good.
We have some special guests that are joining us. We're not going to tell you who it is, but we promise you are not going to want to miss this one. Until then, whether it's just petty grievances with your significant other or something bigger, sometimes you just have to let it go.
And don't look back.